Gaslighting doesn't break your bones. It breaks your mind. It's the kind of abuse that leaves no bruises, no wounds, no visible scars. Just a woman quietly falling apart while everyone else thinks she's fine. Because gaslighting is silent. It slips into a woman's life in whispers, not screams. It hides behind gentle voices, soft apologies. And I'm only saying this because I love you. It slowly turns a confident woman into someone who questions every thought she has. The most dangerous abusers aren't the loud ones. They're the ones who make you doubt your own reality. Gaslighting is invisible, but devastating. It's psychological erosion. You don't notice it happening until there's almost nothing left of you. And the worst part? Most women don't recognize it until years later. Not because they're weak, but because gaslighting teaches them to distrust the one thing they've always relied on, their own mind. When a woman starts asking, "Am I overreacting?" the gaslighting has already begun. Think about it. When was the last time you apologized for something you didn't even do? Just to keep the peace? When was the last time you blamed yourself for someone else's anger? When was the last time a man told you you're imagining things and you believed him, even though you felt the truth in your bones? Gaslighting doesn't start with a lie. It starts with doubt. A tiny seed planted in your mind, whispered often enough to make you question the entire world around you. And once that doubt takes root, a woman begins to disappear from her own life without even realizing she's fading. What gaslighting really is, not what people think. Gaslighting is not an argument. Arguments end. Gaslighting rewrites the ending. It's not a misunderstanding. Misunderstandings can be cleared up. Gaslighting makes the truth impossible to find. Most women think gaslighting is just someone lying a lot or manipulating a little. But the reality is far darker. Gaslighting is a psychological strategy, a deliberate, calculated method designed to erase a woman's reality and replace it with a man's version of the world. Not by force, but by slowly, methodically dismantling her ability to trust herself. Gaslighting doesn't change what happened. It changes what you believe happened. That's the real danger. A woman can fight an enemy she can see. But how does she fight an enemy who convinces her the enemy doesn't exist? Gaslighting has one purpose: control. Control the narrative. Control the memories. Control the meaning of every conversation. Control the emotional climate so completely that she doubts her own instincts more than she doubts his lies. But control is only the beginning. Gaslighting creates confusion, the kind that eats you from the inside. Suddenly, she can no longer tell the difference between discomfort and overreaction, between intuition and insecurity, between his cruelty and her sensitivity. When confusion becomes normal, manipulation becomes invisible. And then comes the most dangerous stage: dependency. Not financial, not physical, but psychological. The abuser becomes the only person she trusts to explain her own feelings back to her. He becomes the interpreter of her emotions, the editor of her memories, the narrator of her entire inner world. That's the moment a woman stops asking, "Is he lying?" and starts asking, "What's wrong with me?" Gaslighting isn't about truth. It's about power, the kind that doesn't need chains or cages. The goal of gaslighting is simple: break her certainty, steal her clarity, own her reality. And once a woman's reality starts slipping through her fingers, she becomes the perfect target for what comes next. Because the painful truth is this: women don't become victims of gaslighting by chance. There's a reason women, especially good, empathetic, selfless women, become the perfect targets. And that's exactly what we need to talk about next. Why women become the perfect targets. Gaslighting doesn't work on every person, and that's the part nobody talks about. It works devastatingly well on women because women are groomed for it long before a toxic man ever enters their lives. From childhood, women are conditioned to be agreeable, be polite, be nice, don't upset anyone, don't raise your voice, don't make things uncomfortable. A girl is taught to keep the peace, even if she has to shatter herself to do it. And so she grows up understanding everyone else, their moods, their needs, their excuses, while no one ever bothers understanding her. She's taught to be forgiving, even when she's the one being hurt. Be the bigger person, let it go. Don't make a scene. Forgiveness becomes a reflex, not a choice. Then comes the most dangerous conditioning: self-blaming. Girls learn to apologize even when they're the ones who were wronged. They learn to smooth over tension they didn't create. They learn to question themselves before they ever question a man. Women don't need to be controlled. They were trained to control themselves. And because women are raised to be the emotional peacekeepers, they become experts at avoiding conflict, even if the cost is their sanity. They bend, they compromise, they shrink, they over-explain, they hold everything together, even when everything is tearing them apart. This isn't a weakness. This is cultural programming. The painful truth? Women aren't perfect victims, they're perfect targets. Not because they lack strength, but because the world taught them that their voice is dangerous, their anger is unattractive, their intuition is irrational, and their boundaries are selfish. You weren't weak, you were trained from childhood to doubt your own voice. And once a woman doubts her own voice, gaslighting becomes effortless. A toxic man doesn't have to work hard to erase her reality. She's already been taught to erase herself. And this is where the real danger begins. Because once a woman is conditioned to doubt herself, a gaslighter knows exactly which tactics will break her mind next. So let's expose those tactics one by one. The tactics: dark, real, relatable. Gaslighting is not random. It's a system, a method, a psychological blueprint designed to dismantle a woman from the inside out. And every tactic has one goal: to make her trust a man's version of reality more than her own. Let's break down the tactics one by one, the ones women don't recognize until it's too late. 1. That never happened. This is the first strike: the erasure of memory. She knows what she saw. She knows what she heard. But he denies it with such confidence that she questions her own senses. A woman doesn't forget the truth. She forgets the right to believe it. 2. You're too sensitive. He takes her pain and hands it back to her as a flaw. Her tears become dramatic. Her discomfort becomes overreacting. Her boundaries become attitude. If a man can convince a woman her emotions are the problem, he never has to face his behavior. 3. "You're crazy." The most brutal blow. Not said in anger, but said in disappointment, the kind that cuts deeper. A direct attack on her sanity. Once a woman questions her own mind, the gaslighter has already won. 4. Constant story changes. He shifts details, timelines, and intentions. Every version contradicts the last. She tries to keep up. She tries to understand. Until confusion becomes her normal state. Confusion is not a side effect. It's the strategy. Confusion, surrender, dependency. 5. Using love as weaponized evidence. If I didn't love you, I wouldn't be saying this. He uses love as a shield to hide cruelty. The message is clear. If it hurts, it's because I love you. This is emotional warfare disguised as devotion. 6. Playing the victim. She brings up a concern. He turns it into an attack. Suddenly, she's the selfish one, the dramatic one, the one who doesn't understand him. She starts comforting him for the pain he caused. A woman can't protect herself when she's always busy protecting the man who hurt her. 7. Isolation disguised as protection. Your friends don't understand you like I do. Your family doesn't really want the best for you. It sounds caring. It's actually a cage. Once she's isolated, he becomes the only voice she hears. 8. The apology. Reset cycle. Hurt, deny, fight, apologize, love bomb, repeat. This is addiction psychology. Highs so high, she forgets the lows. Lows so low, she clings to the highs. The cycle is designed so she remembers the apology, not the abuse. And the most heartbreaking part is this. These tactics don't just damage a woman, they break the way she sees herself. So let's talk about the psychological cost women pay when gaslighting goes unchecked. The psychological damage, the real cost. Gaslighting doesn't just distort a woman's reality, it rewires it. It changes the way she thinks, the way she feels, the way she moves through the world. The damage is not loud, it's not explosive. It's slow, quiet, suffocating. The first thing to die inside a gaslit woman is her certainty. Self-doubt becomes her default setting. She questions her tone, her memory, her feelings, her reactions. She wonders if she misunderstood, misheard, misremembered, or misinterpreted. Every thought has a shadow attached to it. A gaslit woman doesn't ask, "Is he lying?" She asks, "What if I'm wrong?" Then comes the over-apologizing. She says sorry for things she didn't do, for things she didn't cause, for things she wasn't responsible for. Apology becomes her language of survival. She starts making herself small, shrinking her needs, her voice, her presence. She learns to take up less space, not physically, but emotionally. She becomes careful, cautious, and calculated. Walking on eggshells becomes her natural rhythm. Then she begins over-explaining. Paragraphs for what should be a sentence. Stories for what should be a statement. Proof for feelings she should never have had to justify. Because deep down, she no longer trusts her own judgment. She trusts others, especially him, before she trusts herself. Gaslighting doesn't take away a woman's power. It convinces her she never had any. And the most heartbreaking damage? She loses the memory of who she was before all this. The confident version, the intuitive version, the loud, bright, instinctive version. She forgets the woman she used to be. Gaslighting doesn't make you confused. It makes you forget who you were before the confusion started. This is the real cost, not the arguments, not the tears, not the chaos. It's identity theft, the psychological hijacking of a woman's self-worth. And once a woman's mind has been weakened and rewritten, people often ask, why doesn't she just leave? But the truth is far more complex and far more painful. That's exactly what we need to unravel next. Why women don't leave and why it's not their fault. People love to ask, why didn't she just leave? But they never ask the real question. What did he do to make leaving feel impossible? Because when a woman stays in a toxic, gaslit relationship, it's not weakness, it's psychology. And it's weaponized against her. First, there's trauma bonding, the cycle of pain, apology, affection, repeat. It creates chemical addiction. The same brain pathways activated by drugs are activated by emotional abuse. Her mind isn't choosing him, it's craving the high after every emotional crash. She's not attached to the man. She's attached to the relief he gives after causing the pain. Then comes the hope cycle. Every apology feels like a promise. Every soft moment feels like proof that he can change. And she holds on to that version of him, the version that barely exists. She's already made emotional investments, time, effort, memories, pieces of herself she can't get back. Walking away feels like throwing all of that into the trash. Then there's the fear of being wrong. Gaslighting trains her to doubt her own perception. What if she misread the situation? What if she overreacted? What if leaving him makes her the villain he says she is? A woman questions her reality long before she questions the man destroying it. And there's always the desire to fix the relationship. Women are taught that love is labor, that if a relationship is broken, the woman must repair it, soften it, sacrifice more for it. And on top of all that, society whispers in her ear, be patient. Don't give up so easily. Every relationship has problems. But here's the truth. She doesn't stay because she's blind. She stays because the good moments were real, even if the man who gave them wasn't. She's not in love with the abuse. She's in love with the moments that made the abuse feel worth surviving. But eventually, something inside her begins to crack, quietly, softly, slowly. And that's when the truth finally emerges. She isn't broken. She's been manipulated. And once that realization hits, she starts seeing the signs she missed all along. And those signs are what we must uncover next. How to recognize it in your life. Gaslighting doesn't start with explosions. It starts with tiny cracks in your reality. So here's a 10-second gut check that exposes more truth than a year of excuses. Do you apologize constantly, even when you don't know what you did wrong? That's not kindness. That's conditioning. Do you question your own memory, replaying conversations because you're terrified you misheard? That's not forgetfulness. That's mental sabotage. Do you feel guilty for being hurt, like your pain is an inconvenience? That's not emotional maturity. That's manipulation. Do you only feel crazy around one specific person and perfectly sane everywhere else? That's not instability. That's psychological targeting. Do you hide things, soften truths, or shrink yourself just to avoid conflict? That's not peacekeeping. That's survival mode. A woman doesn't lose her sanity. She loses the right to trust it. Gaslighting works because it's slow, because the abuser doesn't steal your reality in one violent moment. He steals it grain by grain, like sand slipping through your fingers. One day, you're confident. One day, you know what you saw, felt, and heard. And then suddenly, or maybe gradually, you don't know anything anymore. Your emotions feel suspect. Your memories feel unreliable. Your instincts feel too dangerous to trust. That confusion isn't random. It's engineered. Gaslighting is not a misunderstanding. It's architecture, a blueprint designed to make a woman rely on someone who is actively destroying her. Your reality isn't the problem. Their manipulation is. And here's the most heartbreaking part. Women often recognize gaslighting not when something is wrong, but when something inside them goes completely numb, when silence becomes safer than honesty, when fear becomes easier than truth, when emotional survival becomes the only priority. But awareness is the first crack in the cage. Once a woman recognizes the pattern, even faintly, she can begin to challenge it. And that leads us to the next part. The steps to reclaim her reality and take her power back. Reclaiming your reality, the healing path. Healing from gaslighting doesn't begin with courage. It begins with permission. Permission to trust your voice again. Permission to stop shrinking. Permission to believe what you feel, even when someone tries to convince you your feelings are flawed. The first step is simple, but brutally powerful. Reconnect with your voice. For so long, a manipulative man rewrote your reality. He edited your sentences. He corrected your emotions. He turned your truth into overreacting. Now, it's time to reclaim the narrative. Your voice wasn't lost, it was silenced. That means it can be unsilenced. Then comes the discipline to pause instead of react. Gaslighting traps a woman in emotional whiplash. He triggers her, denies it, then blames her. But the moment she pauses, even for 3 seconds, she breaks the cycle. Because silence becomes clarity. Clarity becomes power. Next, she learns to build emotional boundaries. Not walls, but borders. Boundaries that say, I will not negotiate my reality. I will not explain basic respect. I will not shrink to make someone else comfortable. Women are trained to prioritize harmony over honesty, peace over truth. But boundaries are where healing begins. Then comes the hardest part, validating your own feelings. For years, she was told her pain was dramatic, her instincts were wrong, her reactions were irrational. But her emotions were always evidence. Evidence she was being hurt. You don't heal by proving he was wrong. You heal by believing yourself again. Reclaiming reality isn't dramatic. It's quiet. It's choosing to trust your memory. Choosing to say no. That did happen. Choosing to believe the version of you that existed before the confusion. And once a woman begins reclaiming her inner world, even in small, fragile steps, something incredible happens. She realizes she was never powerless. She was simply misled. And now she's ready for the final step, closing the chapter and stepping into a life where her reality belongs entirely to her. Here's the truth. Most people never dare to say out loud, if someone is making a woman question her reality, she must ask herself why that person is so terrified of her trusting it. Because a woman who trusts her perception is powerful. A woman who believes her intuition is unstoppable. A woman who stands firmly in her truth cannot be controlled, manipulated, or rewritten. Gaslighting isn't about confusion. It's about fear. Their fear of her clarity, their fear of her strength, their fear that the moment she sees the truth, she will walk away and they will lose the power they never deserve to have. Mini hook. The moment a woman believes herself again, the abuser's entire strategy collapses. So, let this be your closing reminder. Sharp, clean, undeniable. Your mind is yours. Your truth is yours. And the moment you claim it back, their power ends. You don't need permission. You don't need their validation. You don't need the version of reality they tried to paint over your own. You only need one thing: the courage to trust the voice you buried under years of doubt. And when you do, the woman you used to be, the one before the confusion, before the fear, before the gaslighting, she comes back, stronger, clearer, untouchable. If this message spoke to your heart, if it made something inside you finally make sense, subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story that reminds you of your worth. Like the video if it helped you see your truth more clearly. Share it with a woman who needs to hear this today. And leave a comment, even just a single word, to tell the world you're reclaiming your reality. Your healing starts here.